If you are a Spartacus fan, let me hear ya. This guy is also the badass in what movie? The Hobbit. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, the fantastic Mr. Manu Bennett! It's on. Oh, yeah.
Hello, Orlando. You know, I was just standing backstage and I was watching the images on the back of that screen and I saw Crixus. And I saw this new guy, Slade Wilson, who's becoming Deathstroke. And I often wondered to myself how I was ever so lucky to make it right here, right now, in front of you all, being appreciated for something that for me was just a hobby. It wasn't just a hobby, but it was about, you know, I walked around the last few days and I'm really starting to wonder what this connection is that I have with Comic-Cons. Because I see these people and I see their needs. I see people dressed up. I see somebody over there dressed as the costume that I wear, Deathstroke. You know, and I wonder, why is it important? You know, when I first got involved in the Comic-Cons, you know, the word geek, the word, you know, it's a subversive culture, you know, people, you know. But you know what I've suddenly realized? I've realized it's about feeling. It's about people needing to express themselves. It's about people identifying with heroes and villains, and these comic books are really references to society. You know, they're metaphors on you know, our individual souls that all come together in one country or one planet in ways that we can see the dark side and the light. And you know, I said that I got into this industry because of, you know, it was a hobby. Well, it wasn't just a hobby for me. You know, it was a tragic moment in my life where, you know, in a car accident, I lost my mother and brother really quickly in my life, and I had to find a way to emote and to connect and to, find a way for my own life to be able to be, you know, translated and connect with other people. Because, you know, if I just stayed as that broken young child, I would turn to drugs or alcohol or, you know, fall off the wayside with anger and things like this. But you know, in the end, the art of performance, the art of wearing costumes, cosplay, the art of reading stories and have people writing stories and being involved in the telling of stories with society, suddenly meant that I was in these metaphors, in these translations of character that meant something to people. And I was hiding from that little broken kid. I hid behind Crixus. When Crixus was roaring, when Crixus was reaching out to touch a female through the bars of that prison, all those moments were my own yearning. And the fact that I was able to translate it in a healthy and productive way, but really feel it like the way that I really feel as a human being, and then to have that performance respected by you all, I'm telling you, it really is such a... I suddenly then realized why I'm standing here. Because I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I found a way through this big industry that we're all involved in to just portray some true emotion. And you guys know those emotions all too well because you dress in the same costumes. You understand the same stories. People come up to me and go, "Did you read the Slade Wilson comics?" And things like this. You know, I have to keep on adjusting myself to be responsive because I'm one of these lucky few actors who did get in front of the camera, who did get on the stage and can do the performances. But I have to do them honestly because you are the measuring stick. You are the audience. And you know, so many celebrities get out there and say, I love you all, you know. But it's true. I owe it to you for acknowledging this young broken kid who took his emotions onto a stage and got behind a camera and performed and you guys appreciated it, and that's the only reason I am here, so thank you. Yeah. And thank you for the geeks to being smart enough to realize the mechanism of emotions that are translated through this world of storytelling that becomes these events. Because you guys made it this big, and Comic-Cons are getting bigger and bigger. And it's all because of the smart guys, the geeks. I love it. Well done.
Excuse me, Manu, if I can interrupt. I forgot to tell the audience, if you guys have questions for Manu, there are microphones down on that end. There's a microphone right here in front of me. If you guys can go ahead and line up, Manu can go ahead and retrieve those questions from either side. So I'll go ahead and start off while you guys are running up to the mic. Manu, of course, when you do dramatic auditions, you're going to have to read a part, read a line to the producers or the writers, whoever you're auditioning in front of. But in terms of physical auditions for shows such as Spartacus and probably Arrow, did you literally have to go through or distribute or display any sort of physical capabilities in order to gain your parts?
You know, when you go for an audition of that magnitude, you're up against literally thousands of other actors. And again, I'll reference my own life and my own struggles. When you get there, there's something you have to do as an actor. I mean, today I had a couple of young guys walk up to me and say, you know, what do I do, man? What do I do? You know, and there's a bunch of, you know, I said to him, listen, you know, like, I'm lucky because I'm like in that 100-meter final or race now that's at like the Olympics or the national championships or something, you know. I can get in that race and run against, who's that guy that does this? What's his name? Yeah, you know, I'm lucky. I'm able to, but you know, prior to that, I had to go to that oval, the local oval, and run against the local 100-meter runners, and just, you know, run those races in little athletics and stuff like that. You know, that then bring you up onto a more experience. More experience gets you into a better race. You know, and the same applies to acting. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, now I remember going in for Spartacus. Here's a little story about Spartacus. You know, almost a year prior to getting Spartacus, I was offered a movie to play a UFC fighter called Mark Kerr in a movie called The Smashing Machine. Now, in order to get that role, I had to physically transform myself into. You thought I was big on Spartacus or, you know, as Deathstroke? The way that I got my body prepared for The Smashing Machine, this movie, you know, I was giant. I was literally, you know, I did some things I'm not going to talk about in order to get big, but that's how I was convinced I had to do this role. It was about a guy who went through, you know, using steroids and certain things, and I needed to understand that world, and I committed myself to that role. But after going through 5 months of like, and I mean, I trained so hard, my legs were out here. I looked like John Cena. Seriously. I mean, I was like a gorilla. I was like this, you know. But I got that role, and I got to South Africa to start filming this role, and they had like Fedor Emelianenko, this great, you know, Russian fighter. They had Shogun Rua, who was going to come, you know, this great South American fighter, and Van Damme was going to play my coach. Well, Van Damme didn't show up on his plane. And we're all in South Africa ready to film this thing, and he didn't show up. And the whole film fell over because of it. And we were all sent home, and I got back to Australia with not a dime in my pocket, like on steroids, like this guy. And I went, I mean, coming off steroids, you know, honestly, it's a dangerous sport, that stuff, right? I did it as a commitment to the role. There's been other actors who have done that sort of stuff as well. I only did it for that role, but it was a tough journey coming off that. And I had to go work on a building site because I just had no income and I had no money left. And I was in the back of this house digging a swimming pool out. I was just digging into the ground deeper and deeper. And my manager was ringing up and she'd say, Manu, you still digging that hole? And I said, yeah, Ruth, it's getting deeper. She says, Manu, don't worry, we're going to find you a role, we're going to find you something. Then one day she rang up and she said, Manu, I found this script called Spartacus, and I'm going to go in and audition for it. I want you to go and audition for it. So I went along to this casting, you know, I knew the lady who was running the casting. And when I walked in, the hall was full of 20-year-olds. Like I was like 36, 37 at the time. And there was all these 20-year-olds, and all these young guys were in the hallway going, "I am Spartacus. I am Spartacus." And some guys were just going, "I'm Spartacus." You know, it's like, who's going to get in there and say, "I am Spartacus"? I'll tell you who did, Andy Whitfield. But I remember walking in and the casting agent who I knew, Faith Martin, she went, "Oh, Manu, oh, you're probably too old for this, but come on, we'll put you on tape anyway." And I remember at the time I just went, but I got there, you know, and I went back in my, you know, I'm not a huge fan for method acting. It's a bit selfish on set. If you get too far into yourself, you've got to work with people and work with other actors. But, you know, there's some things that you have to pull out of your past. So, you know, I'd lost the smashing machine. I'd been through this whole journey. I'd sort of, you know, reflected on my life. And I got in there and I just, you know, realized here was this Spartacus character, you know. The scene was the scene with Crassus and Spartacus that was in the last season, was the audition at the beginning of the whole series, was this scene. So I did this scene, you know, going for Spartacus. Anyway, I didn't hear anything back for about 2 months. And, you know, then I got a phone call that they wanted me to come back in and audition for a character called Barker. And so I went and auditioned for Barker, okay? And then I got the message back that they wanted to fly me to LA to do a screen test for Barker. And so I was telling all these workers on this house, I was digging the hole, you know. They called me Hollywood. They go, "Hey, Hollywood, what are you doing out there digging that hole?" You know, yeah, goes. So I'm digging. I'm going, "Oh, I've got this audition." They call me back for Barker. So I'm getting ready to fly to LA. Then we get a phone call that says, "Oh, Barker's now going to be killed in episode 5, so they're going to cast it locally out of New Zealand." I was living in Australia at the time, so it's gone. It's not going to go to you. And I was like, ah. A couple of weeks go past. I get another phone call. They want you to come in and read for a character called Ananias. Can you imagine me walking around like Peter? "What is beneath your feet?" I went for it. And a couple of weeks later, no, you didn't get that role. I thought that series was like tugging at my heart. It was like, possible, no. And a few weeks went past again. And I really thought at that stage it was over. But then my manager rang up and said, Manu, they want you now to read for a character called, it's spelled Crixus. Crixus. She's German, she couldn't even say it. And you know what, I kind of like that word, that name. It's kind of like just sort of washed through me. There was something about that word, Crixus. And so I had this thing going on where I was going down to a swimming pool and swimming all the time because of the steroid thing that I'd done for Smashing Machine. My body got really, you know, it got affected by that, and I was trying to get all of my limbs stretched back again by swimming. So I got into that, and so I got into this pool on the morning of this audition for Crixus. I was going for a screen test. That's the big final moment. And in the morning, I got up nice and early. I went down to the swimming pool and I swam. And I got up and I had this nice breakfast, and I was just like in the zone. I walked into this Faith Martin's office, who told me I was too old. And then I got in there and I bought some weights with me, and I started doing the weights, and it sort of was like 10 minutes past the audition time, and I was wondering where they were, and then Faith Martin walked in and said, Manu, what are you doing here? And I went, I'm here for my screen test for Crixus. She said, no, Manu, look, your manager and the producers had some argument about about residual payments. So they've cancelled your audition. It's not going to go any further. My audition for Crixus was meant to finish at that moment, and I was being sent out to go home. And my heart was just like, I couldn't believe how losing the Smashing Machine in South Africa and then going through 4 different roles, and now here I am standing there and they're telling me that an argument about residual payments was going to not get me that audition. And I walked out of the room and I got my phone out and I tried to ring Ruth and it wouldn't go through, and I walked like all the way around this big stadium in Sydney, and I got to the other end of it and I finally got in contact with Ruth and I said, Ruth, what is going on? This is. I mean, I said I'd do this for free. Why has there been an argument about residuals? And she went, oh, Manu, I'm so sorry. Like they went crazy about something that we just made a request on, but I don't know how to change this. And I said, make a call, make calls, communicate, get out there, get amongst people and make this turn around. So she started making calls and I was going home and some big guys in Hollywood had said, close the door on me. Luckily, she got in touch with somebody who made a call, and they made a call, and then I was almost home, and Faith Martin rang me up and said, Manu, where are you? And I said, I'm about 2 kilometres away. She said, run back here right now. And I ran. I remember just sweating and getting back into the studio and going like, and she was like, quick, Manu, we've only got 5 minutes to do this because I'm doing another screen test in a minute. So that whole swim in the morning to get me in the mood and I mean, my head was screwed. I mean, this was like life just getting you and going, are you going to handle it or not? Dig deep, because we're going to rattle the cage, and if you can't handle it, fall out. And I remember just sitting there going like, Crixus, who are you? And I remember her putting the camera on, and I remember just, maybe all of that was meant to happen, because of that moment in the universe, in my little life, and Crixus from 74 BC, who deserved someone who'd been through a whole lot of shit to play his role, because that's what that role requires. It all came together, and I got in front of that camera, and everything went through that lens in a way that when I finished it, I went, whew, channeling the right emotions, getting it, really focusing, and it happened. 2 months later, I was sitting in Taronga Zoo, in a bird aviary. My name, Manu, means bird. And I was sitting in a bird aviary with my little girl, my little daughter, in a pram. And I was just rocking her in a pram, and I was seriously thinking about my life, baby. I hadn't heard back from these guys, and the phone rang, and it was Rob Tappert, the producer of, you know what? I would never have got this. Rob Tappert produced Xena. Yeah. Well, he was the guy producing Spartacus. In Xena, I'd had this fight. I played Mark Antony in an episode called Mark Antony, Antony and Cleopatra, and I'd had this fight in that particular episode of Xena where the swords were rubber. So I said to the other stunt guys, I said, guys, these swords are rubber. Let's just hit each other. So instead of doing like, hey, we were like, we were like smacking each other and just really, just making these rubber swords hit. And this safety officer had come on board and said, stop, you can't do that. Anyway, jump forward. Here I'm in a bird aviary. Huia in a pram. And the phone rings and I pick it up and it's Rob Tappert. And he's got this, he always calls me Manu. He's like Texan, he's from Dallas or something. He's like, Manu? It's Rob Tappert. I just like to say that, I've been really, backing you for this role of Crixus. But, the studios have been, they wanted to get a big name and you know, I've been really trying to back you for this. And to tell you the truth, I really want to offer you the role. But remember back in the days of Xena, you were hitting those guys with the swords. I'm like, yeah, Rob. Well, you have to promise me you're not going to hurt Andy Whitfield, who's going to be our Spartacus. Honestly, these birds were tweeting away, and I was like, I said, Rob, I promise. Manu, welcome to Spartacus. Yeah, and that's how that went down. And I never held that promise because when I played Crixus, I played him like a man possessed, which he kind of was. Yeah. And you know, then towards the end of Spartacus, I was like, oh, here comes that period again of a job's going to end. What are you going to do? And we got a phone call from Peter Jackson. Yeah. I remember being in the sound and the motion capture studio where Andy Serkis made Gollum, you know, and here I was in that motion capture studio and Peter Jackson, everyone was going, Peter's going to be here in 5 minutes, and everyone was like, he's going to be here in 5 minutes. Peter's going to be here in 5 minutes. 5 minutes, he's going to be here. Okay, 4 minutes and 45 seconds. 4 minutes and 45 seconds. He's going to be here in 4 minutes and 45 seconds. And it was like this countdown for like the man to arrive, you know. and finally, you know, it came down to he's here. Open the doors. In comes Peter Jackson, no shoes on, like this. Hey guys. He's a character, I tell you. He's fun. And he walked in. He went, Manu, I'm so happy to have you here. I love Crixus. And I was like, suddenly the penny dropped. He'd seen Spartacus. Another funny story. I went to the Wolf of Wall Street. I went to the premiere in New York, and I saw Martin Scorsese at the after party when he just arrived. And I went and I pushed my way through everybody. And as he was sitting down, I sat right next to him, and I went, "Hi, Mr. Scorsese." I just want to say, what a fantastic Scorsese film for a whole new decade. What a way to lead it. And he went, oh, thank you. Thank you. And I said, oh, I'm from New Zealand. I did this show, Spartacus. Martin Scorsese said, Spartacus? I love Spartacus. And I went, I played Crixus. And he went, Crixus? You're Crixus? And he went, oh, listen, the reason why I did like the snorting of the cocaine, kids, block your ears. You know, the reason why I did all of these really sort of edgy sex scenes in The Wolf of Wall Street is because of Spartacus. He said, you know, I was convinced after watching Spartacus that you could do whatever. Martin Scorsese, and I was like, well, okay, Martin, you just call me sometime. Yeah? No. I was like, thank you. Yeah. But amazing. But anyway, just going back, so here I was with Peter Jackson, The Hobbit came up, but still, that was only a very short-lived job. Spartacus was really popular with the US military, so we flew to Kuwait and we did a USO tour to go visit some of the troops that were there. Yeah. And you know what? There's nothing more profound than seeing an 18-year-old kid in a country that far away with a very, very, very big weight on their shoulders, and they're getting flown in helicopters up to Afghanistan and and you meet these kids and they're looking at you, trying to suck it up. You know, going like, hey, bro, yeah, we really enjoy Crixus, man. Like, fuck, we watch that thing before we go out and stuff like that. I'm going, wow, you know. But, you know, when I looked at these kids and I knew what they do, mate, they call cut if somebody hits me with a blade. Cut! Manu's been hit, wait up. You know, these guys in the arena, you know, and, you know, it was an incredibly moving thing to see real young men in the battle scenario. It was a very big wake-up call. But anyway, I was hanging around with some special forces guys up there, And one of the guys showed me this chokehold, and he sort of, choked me out, literally. I grabbed him by the balls because he would always push it. And I was like going, but he was like, I was feeling like I was about to black out, but I was going, he told me he couldn't feel himself for about 2 hours afterwards. Because I didn't know, because he was meant to be just showing me, but then he started doing it for real, and I thought, what can I do? What can I do? I know what. Anyway, those boys were really cool. Like, these military guys were really, really cool with me, and we hung out and became good friends. We actually snuck out of the hotel one night. We were not meant to leave the hotel. We all snuck out and went to this hookah bar. Not a hookah bar, a hookah bar. It's where you smoke those, like, local long kind of pipes. You have, like, apple and cinnamon hookah and stuff like that. Banana hookah. But anyway, we became good friends. And when I went to the airport in Kuwait, they came and saw me off. And all those boys have to live through some pretty trying times, So they had this 5-hour energy drink. That if they had to be, in a serious battle where they couldn't go to sleep, they'd take a 5-hour energy drink as part of the way you do things. But they gave me one of these because we'd been having a bit to sort of counteract the jet lag that we're getting when we're there. But they gave me one when I was leaving. They said, "Hey, Manu, take this with you to remember us by." So I took this 5-hour energy drink and this memory of this guy choking me out onto this plane. And I got to LA, and I was in LA for 4 days before I was flying back for the Hobbit premiere. And I got a phone call from my manager on the day that I was leaving, and she said, "Manu, what time's your flight?" I said, 4 p.m. She said, "Can you go in and audition for this show, Arrow?" And I was like, that's Stephen Amell, isn't it? Because Stephen Amell was one of the 3 people who read for Spartacus. Stephen Amell, Liam McIntyre, and one other guy from New York, a dark-haired guy, came over and did screen tests I read with all 3 of them. So there was Stephen, like, on these posters all over LA, and so she rang me up and she goes, and I said, I've seen the posters and everything. She said, "Okay, well, what time's your flight?" "Well, it's 4 o'clock. "Okay, well, can you be there at 11 and go straight from there to the airport?" And I was like, "Right, okay, well, is there a script?" She said, "No, there's no scripts. You're going to get sides when you get in there." So I drive through LA to this casting agency. I pulled up and I remember just feeling so jet lagged. I'd done New Zealand, Kuwait, then Kuwait, LA, and I was like, I had nothing in the tank. I was literally just kind of like, really, really sort of a little bit out of it. And I was like, oh God, I don't have any energy. Energy? 5-hour energy? I went to the boot of the car, got into my luggage, and pulled out the 5-hour energy drink these Special Forces military guys had given me in Kuwait. And I downed that thing. Like Mirakuru. I was like... Okay, that works. I got in there. I wasn't quite amped up at the beginning, but I got in there and they had the sides for this particular audition scene. And the scene was the first scene that Slade appears in Arrow, where he drops through the roof of the fuselage and jumps up behind Oliver and grabs him in a headlock. And I'm sitting out there, and like the Spartacus thing with all the 20-year-old kids going on Spartacus, I heard all these variations. I could hear it through the doorway of, "You got 10 seconds to tell me something I believe in, I'm going to cut out your throat box." Or, "You got 10 seconds to do something, I'm going to cut out your throat box." I'm thinking, that guy's a bit over the top. But I was listening to all these sort of performances, all these levels of performance, and just trying to work out how those guys that I just met in Kuwait, how these Special Forces guys would be Slade Wilson, a Special Forces guy. So came to my turn. They open up the door. I walk in. There's a camera like this. I'm like, "Hey, there's a director behind it." He goes, "Okay, you've read the sides. We know you were just called in the last minute." I said, Yeah, I've read the sides, yeah. Whew, that 5-hour energy drink is really kicking in. And the reader was like sitting where this guy over here sort of is, you're sort of standing behind the camera, because that's where they do screen tests sometimes. You got to pretend a whole bunch of stuff. But I didn't want to pretend the chokehold. So I said, can I have the reader, do you mind coming up here, mate? Can I have the reader come up onto the stage? But I said, can I have the reader come in front of the camera? And the casting director was like, you okay with that? And I said,
yeah.
And you know what? That's exactly how this kid said it. Just like that. And I'm like, okay, with the chokehold, I'm gonna hold you in the chokehold, okay? Like, just to be a little bit more like it. So do you mind that? Yeah. So I grabbed him, So I grabbed this guy like this, and I was like, okay, you ready to go? Now the 5-hour energy drink was streaming through my veins, like Mirakuru. And the casting director said, and action. And I went, you got 10 seconds to tell me something I believe, kid. I'm gonna cut out your throat box. And at that point, if you just collapse onto the ground, right? At that point, this guy collapsed and passed out from the chokehold. And I was standing there, stay there for a second, and I was standing there, and I went, I remember just looking, this is on tape somewhere, they've got this on tape. And I looked up and I went, is that part of the scene? And the casting director said, no, I think he just choked him out. And I went, I'm sorry, I went, are you okay, mate? And this guy was just coming to on the ground, and I went, oh, please go. And the casting, come on, mate. And the casting director said, go to the bathroom and wash your face to this guy, right? Go and splash some water on your face. So go to the bathroom and wash some face. Thanks, mate. Thanks for your help. And I'm like, I'm sorry, man. And the casting director said, no, it was perfect. And he said, come and have a look, come and have a look. So we ran behind the camera, and I was like, oh yeah. And we looked on the playback, and we saw the guy's eyes sort of went. And he was like, it's great. Look, I'm going to call your agent now. We're going to make some calls, and we'll see. I'm pretty sure there's a really good audition. You'll probably be in the running for it. And I was like, yeah, really? Okay. And he's like, okay, well, you got to go to the airport, eh? And I was like, yeah, I got to go. Okay, bye. Out the door. I was like, oh, God, I just choked somebody out in an audition. I wonder how far that story is going to travel in this town, So I got on a plane. I flew to New Zealand. I flew down to Wellington for the Hobbit premiere, and because it was the first one, the first Hobbit premiere. Because of all the traveling that I'd been doing, like I was like completely run down. I came down with the worst flu of my life. I put my suit on to go to the Hobbit premiere, and I was sweating so badly that I took it off and I hopped back into bed. And I rang up and I said, I'm not going to be able to make it, I'm so sick. And then I lay in bed for half an hour and I went, what are you doing? You got to go to your Hobbit premiere, like it's the Hobbit premiere, Just toughen up, Got out of bed, took another shower, put the suit on, went along, did the red carpet. I had my little girl, Hui, with me, so I had to go, it was like, I had to go. And so, we walked up the red carpet, and Kate Blanchett came up. And she was like, oh, you play Azog. He was, he was such a good bad guy. And she's like going to hug me. And I'm like, don't touch me. Don't do it. She kissed me on the cheek. I thought that was it. She's going down. Kate Blanchett is not going to be doing the world tour premiere. She's going to be in bed going like, what happened to me? What happened to me? It was Manu, wasn't it? Peter Jackson did the same thing. He came up and hugged me. And I was like, I'm dying here. I got home that night, went to bed, got a phone call at 8 o'clock in the morning from my manager. She said, Manu, we just got a phone call from the Arrow people. They really liked your audition. They love it, but they want you to do it again. I hope this doesn't clutch. I'm like, oh, Ruth, I'm dying. I've got the flu so bad. She's going, Manu, if you want this role, you've got to get up now and you've got to film yourself. I said, there's no other people here to do the audition with. I'm in a house by myself. She goes, you've got to get up and do the audition. You've got to do it, otherwise you're not going to get this part. This is the story of my life, guys. These incredibly difficult casting scenarios. So I got out of bed and I was like, oh, God, I had my camera out and I was like, oh God, how do I do it? How do I do it? I got to film myself on a camera. Oh, you got 10 seconds, kid, before I'm going to cut out your throat box. And I rang her back up and said, Ruth, I can't do it, darling. I'm not going to be able to get this part if I do this audition now. And she said, Manu, you've got to do it. You've got to do it. It was unbelievable. It was like this crunch, and I was going, oh, I'll try again. You got 10 seconds, kid. This thing. Who invented iPhones? Why don't they make you do an audition on an iPhone? Anyway, I'd done it, and I'd sort of done an email, and I was just about to send it, and I was going, God, I'm going to lose this role because of this stupid scenario of having a flu. And I really didn't want to send that audition. I got a phone call from Ruth. She said, Manu, they've decided you don't have to do it. I'm telling you, if I'd sent that thing that I did on that tape in that room in my sweaty pajamas going like this, I wouldn't have got slayed. But she said, you don't have to do it. They've decided they're going to go with you, And I was like, oh, fuck. I'm telling you, the casting process of this industry is killing me. But it's fantastic, it really is. It's like all of that ordeal, how you get through the eye of the needle is just phenomenal, But those military boys over there in Kuwait, considering the role was Slade Wilson's military guy, it was very, very strange how that happened, It was quite incredible. Anyway, look, other questions? I mean, yeah, what do we got?
Your performance as Slade is obviously very well loved among the people, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
What was your... Hold on a second. Here we go. No.
Is this dial a friend?
No. What was your favorite scene in Arrow to film, and is there any action stunt you would love to do on the show?
You know what? It's interesting because people ask me about the stunts on this show, and I don't want to lie about it. The stunts in Canada, Stunt Canada is a union, and whenever you go to do a stunt, the stunt guy comes on. In New Zealand, when I did Spartacus, I did everything myself. Yeah. But respectfully, my stunt coordinator, James Bamford. I had the conversation with him. I said, James, I'm just so used to doing the action. And he said, James Makalopoulos, who's my body double in Arrow, just had a baby. Yay! Good on you, James. Yeah. There's a little clip that's floating around on YouTube with James and I, and we're both dressed as Slade Wilson. And at the same time we go, I am Slade Wilson. And then I raise an eyebrow, then he raises an eyebrow. It's just a little clip, it's fun, but then you'll see why we're body doubles, because he does look kind of like the spitting image. It's fun, But, James said to me, your double needs to feed his baby. He needs the job, Otherwise he won't be coming into work if you do the fight scene. And I was like, you know what? I can act Slade Wilson. And these stunt guys can do their jobs, and you guys are going to enjoy it just as much. And you know what? They may even do it better. And you got to give that up. You got to give that up because it is a team thing. The more I learn that it's not about me, that I'm just part of that wonderful componentry of wonderful people, producers, all the way down to, the guy that goes and get coffee for everybody. The more you sink into that whole ethos of this industry, the more you enjoy it. Because you see everybody. and you acknowledge them all, and they all acknowledge you back, and then that's friendship, that's feeling, that's emotions, and you know it's better to work that way. So unfortunately, I don't do my stunt work in Arrow. The majority of it is for the stunt guys. But one of the most, I mean, my favorite scene in the series to date was, does anybody remember this one? Mr. Wilson, I'd like to introduce you to my son, Oliver. It's nice to finally meet you, Mr. Queen. Yeah. Yeah, that episode just aired the other day. Everybody knows that from Arrow, you know. Bang. Let's get serious. Next question.
Sorry about that. If you, since it's getting so intense, do survive your inevitable fight with Oliver, do you think there's ever going to be a team up between you and John Barrowman to make the most badass couple ever?
What kind of couple are we talking about?
Well, that all depends.
You know, I love John. John's just so wonderful. You know, yeah. You know what? I know this. I know that there's big discussions about John and his character, and the next season is definitely going to evolve with his participation. The final standoff fights. It's not even on the page yet, mate. It's not even on the page. And you know what? You know, some actors like to grab like 2 episodes ahead just so they know what's going on in the future. I don't do that. I just like to get the script when it comes out and read the moment and go like, let's live that moment. You know what I mean? And then whatever comes later is an art, you know, I don't want to have that in my head because it'll project where I'm going to be on that moment. So, yeah. But you know what? It's going to go down, brother.
Thank you.
Yes, mate.
Crixus and Slade are both really intense physical beings. They like to favor swords. When you shoot your scenes for Slade, how much do you channel from your experience with working on Spartacus, the sword play you learned there, and even just the character Crixus?
Yeah, you know, I mean, you know, there's definitely, you know, one project bleeds into the other. You know, I mean, like Peter Jackson saying, "I love you as Crixus," so now you're going to play Azog. You know, they wrote a scene into Arrow where I go, "I like swords," you know, and I got the 2 swords, and then they were playing off Spartacus, definitely tongue in cheek to bring that into it. You know, there's just a growth that's going on in my life, mate, that seems to be centered around my abilities as an actor physically and to play these strong roles. You know, I mean, as an actor, you know, I'm majorly, you know, gracious and like, you know, humble to be part of all of this. And at the same time, you know, imagining, you know, where my career will go and some of the other choices that I might make in other projects to do, you know. But right now, you know, these skill sets seem to be what makes me an actor that people enjoy. And just to have that opportunity is humbling, you know. But you know, sure, you know, people have seen me. You know, these guys saw me in Spartacus from Arrow. But the first thing they said to me when I came onto Arrow was they didn't want Crixus. They said, "Listen, we don't want you to come on here and start going, Oliver Queen, ah, I am Crixus. Shall I begin?" They didn't want this dramatic voice. They wanted me to be, you know, modern and fast. And all the fight sequences in Arrow were like, you know, there's 6 blows to every one that we would have done on Spartacus. Because it's all close hand-to-hand combat and stuff like that. So, you know, we modernized it up, and you know, it's got its own tone. But you know, you don't go sort of, you know. For me right now, there's a likeness to some of these roles. But that's my strength, and that's where I think, you know, the industry's looking at me right now. But, you know, who knows how they'll mix it up in the future, you know? Yeah. Sorry, what was that, Dane? Oh, okay. Thanks, mate. I hope that answered it. One more from each side. Yes, mate.
Seeing as you're both here this weekend, have you had a chance to talk with George Perez, who created Slade Wilson?
Yeah, I spoke with George Perez at a function I did in Ottawa, and he actually looked at me and he went, "You're not old enough to play Slade." I'm not young enough. I'm not old enough. I mean, at what stage? Like, you know. And then I said to him, "Well, I'm 44, George." You know, and he was like, "Oh, okay." you look, I mean, thankfully he thought I looked younger than that. So you know, he was like, "Oh, okay." But then I met Marv Wolfman.
Yeah.
Now, Marv Wolfman created Slade Wilson and Deathstroke. He's the guy who thought up the whole character. You know, George Perez illustrated him. And when I met him, he came running up to the table that I was doing at this signing, and he was like, "Manu, I'm Marv Wolfman." And at first, I didn't. I mean, I'm sorry to all the comic book fans, but at the time, I didn't. I knew George Perez, but I didn't even know Marv Wolfman. And I was saying to the guy, "Who's that?" He goes, "That's the guy who created Deathstroke." And I'm like, "Dude, don't do that. I'm going to come over and do it at your table." I want to go, "It's Marv, it's my career. You know, I've met my maker, you know." But he was such an unassuming kind of guy, you know. He kind of had these glasses on. He was like, "Hey, Manu, hey." I just thought he drunk too much. He was some guy that wanted to sing. But it was fun. No. All respect, I ended up meeting Marv, and Marv said to me that he was really, really happy with the way that that Slade was, you know, that my performance of Slade was. And that was the best compliment I could ever have got, because he's the guy who thought him, not just drew him. You know, the drawing aspect of it would have to be referenced to like the costume department, you know, to the camera department, the way that he's visualized. But the guy who created his soul, you know, was very complimentary, and that was a huge, you know, huge thing for me to hear that from Marv, the creator. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers, brother. It's funny that you dressed up as Crixus, but you asked me an Arrow question. Yes,
And the final question.
First off, I love your work in Spartacus. I love that show more than you can even know. So, two-part question is, what was your favorite season to film in Spartacus? And how hard was the transition between working with Andy and then the replacement actor for Spartacus?
Yeah, good questions. First of all, I'll address it from when Andy was first diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's. You know, our show was going to be cancelled. There was this talk about it, just it was going to be cancelled. Then Stephen DeKnight, the writer, came up with this idea to make a series, because what was going to happen was that Andy Whitfield, at first in his initial diagnosis, needed 12 months of treatment for his initial scenario with the cancer. That 12-month window meant the show couldn't be filmed. So it was going to fall over. But then Stephen DeKnight came up with this idea to write an episode that didn't have Spartacus in it. You know, like Spartacus without Spartacus, which was illogical to you know, to CEOs and producers of stars. You know, going like, "What do you mean, like a Spartacus without Spartacus in it?" He says, "Well, John Hanna's created such a wonderful baddie artist. You know, Lucy Lawless. You know, we've got Enemaeus. We've got, you know, Crixus. And we haven't introduced Gannicus. You know, yeah. You know, I mean, there's all these characters that can be played out, and we can flesh those characters out in this particular scenario called Gods of the Arena."
Yes.
You know, and I remember this conversation going on, and then we were all going like, "Oh, we might be going on with this Gods of the Arena," and then this scripts arrived. And I remember reading this script that said, and here I am, like, you know, working on myself because I needed to be Crixus, you know, champion of Capua. And I read this scene that says, "In the marketplace, some slaves are dragged through the square. Amongst them is one long-haired, straggly, you know, slave that suddenly ends up in a fight with some of the guards, and they knock him to the ground, beat him to the ground, and they pull his hair back, and we reveal Crixus." And I'm reading this scene going like, a slave being dragged into the square, and then I suddenly realized what they were writing was they were writing an origin story for Crixus, where he was arriving as a slave. And then I asked them, well, you know, what did that mean? Where did you come from? And they said, well, you've spent your whole life in the mines. You were taken as a kid from a village, and you've spent your whole life in the mines, and now you're being sold off. And here, in this particular scenario, Badiatus is going to buy you to become a gladiator. And I remember just going like, whoa. Oh, well, I'm too buff. Like, this is Crixus I'm gonna have to lose weight, you know, and change this look, you know, and grow my hair. And so I went through this transformation, you know, where I literally just didn't train anymore. I stopped eating, you know, lots of food and just really sort of trimmed down. I lost about 6 kilograms or 7 kilograms, which looks seriously a lot. You know, a lot thinner. And, you know, I didn't kill myself about it, but, you know, I definitely just sort of stopped all the work. And, you know, why that was such an incredible turnaround, I thought, for my character was that, you know, at that stage, Crixus had been this very defiant, you know, egotistical, you know, gladiator who wanted to dominate. And even though I'd started making a friendship and a relationship that showed the softer side of me and all that sort of stuff, the audience being able to go back and see this character at his most vulnerable, you know, was just a huge opportunity to rebuild a whole new phase of this guy's life. And I remember when I shot the scene where I fought against Barker's lover, what's his name? Octus. And that was the very first scene that Crixus ever had in the arena as his very first fight. I remember doing that scene, and I walked out into the arena and I was like, because, you know, there was all these people roaring, and I was like, you know, and then I got into the fight scene and I was like all of this sort of stuff, and then finally, you know, there was this bit where I was scrambling across the ground. I picked up this knife and Octus came at me with his spear, and I went, and I stabbed him, and then I won this thing, and as a result of it, I went, you know, I just let this primal scream out. After I'd filmed that scene, the director came up to me and said, look, that scene is just going to be so good. Then Rob Tappert suddenly I heard his noise, he went, Manu, we're going to have to reshoot that whole scene, damn it. I mean, what's with the open, this is what he said, what's with the open mouth fly catching acting? You know, Crixus has got to be our champion, you know? Crixus has got to be the champion of Capua, and you've gone and played him like he's a little girl crying. And he took off, and I'm standing there with this director who just complimented me about it, and he went, oh, Manu, you know, and I went, just wait a second. So I ran up into my producer's office, and I slammed the door shut, and I said, Rob, we're going to have this out, right? And I said, Rob, listen, right? Okay, you've got an idea of a hero that's like, you know, strong and, you know, you know, Clint Eastwood, you know, just American hero, right? Tough the whole way, you know, like, you know, there's this certain heroism that is in that world. I want to play Crixus so that he grows and has all of this stuff, you know, all of this layered texture to him. And I don't think he has any of that quality in him until he's standing there and hears the roar of the crowd. And also in the fight, Gannicus told me to break the guy's spear when I was training in the training square, and you guys didn't even include that in the fight. I mean, how come I didn't take Yoda's advice? It's like I'm doing the X-Wing, and it's like you're meant to use the Force, and you're like, oh, I don't even know what to do. Oh, I'll just hit the button. Death Star blows up. Oh, that was lucky. There's elements missing here and the whole thing. And then on the day when I shot it, John Hannah wasn't available, so he wasn't in the audience. So at the end of the fight, the reason why I did this whole internal thing was because there was nobody to register. The only person I'd register is Badiatus, who told me to go out there and become a champion. And I said, John wasn't even in there on the day as well. I mean at the end there, you want something heroic? Give me John Hannah in the audience, and I'll make that moment heroic. So if you remember that, any Spartacus fans, you remember the fight against Octus? Right at the very end, I do the roar, and I'm like aside, and I was like, yeah! You know, but then from there, it cuts to a scene where I'm looking at John Hannah, and I've got my sword pointed at him. And it's such a good shot.
Yes.
Well, that was shot later. on top of it. And then they went back and they shot the breaking of the guy's spear and they re-jumbled the whole fight so it looked like we had this big comeback with Crixus. It was all puzzled together, jigsaw puzzled together. And you know what, there was nothing wrong with what my producer was saying. There was nothing wrong with what I was saying. There was nothing wrong with the first thing that we shot. There was nothing wrong with the stuff after that we shot. Just all of it happened because through mistakes and through, working toward it, we ended up making this great fight scene based on everybody's desires and needs. And that for me was my favorite scene in all of Spartacus, because not only was it a fight in the arena, it was a fight in the creative field as well. But it just goes to show how well we actually did work together as a team and how well we could punctuate something if it was missing a punctuation. And there was a lot of punctuation. Jupiter's fucking cock. Sorry. Yeah, poof. Had to get that one out there.
Hey, Manu. I'm sorry, we're going to have to come to a dead stop. We are way over schedule here, so I apologize.
No
so you
worries.
can go ahead and...
Hey, it's a pleasure.
Can.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you very
Ladies
much,
and
Orlando.
gentlemen.
Hope to see you again. Yeah.
Manu Bennett, folks.
Hey.
Manu Bennett.